The Brooklyn Nets have moved Kyrie Irving and Markieff Morris to the Dallas Mavericks for Dorian Finney-Smith, Spencer Dinwiddie, a 2029 unprotected first-round pick, and 2 second-round picks. Now, we had planned to do the big Kyrie podcast because I assumed that the Nets would wait until later this week to do whatever it was that they were going to do. Call Kyrie's bluff, retain Kyrie, or move him, see what the best offers are that come through. I did not expect Dallas to so immediately just decide we're going for this. We believe that we are the right situation for Kyrie Irving, and to offer as much as they did. And I'm sure that when Brooklyn saw this offer, I've gotten some other teams that have, or other like sources around the league. I don't want to like throw out actual offers. They've kind of told me what some of the offers were. This was by far, like from what I gather, the best one. And of course it was, because this is the one Brooklyn accepted, right? So it is intriguing to me that Dallas decided to just so immediately go all in on Kyrie Irving. Given what we know about Kyrie Irving, it's an intriguing fit on the court. It's an intriguing decision by Brooklyn to prioritize more current players, guys that can help their team now, as opposed to assets that could maybe help them down the road outside of that 2029 unprotected first round pick. Where do you immediately fall when you look at this deal, Adam? Let's just go first impressions. When you saw this, what did you immediately see?
Yeah, so the first instinct for me wasn't to think about an overpay from Dallas. It wasn't to think about like really the expedience in which they got it done. I think the Mavs needed that first initial offer to be really strong in order to make sure that they closed the deal on this thing before letting anybody else up their offer, up their ante, and kind of match what the asking price was. So once Dallas made that decision, I think the manner in which they moved forward, getting it done within 48 hours, giving up exactly what they gave up, was the right move. That said, I'm always going to have questions about trying to get a championship level situation out of Kyrie Irving. And that is very much due to the reliability that he has not necessarily shown over the last several years in Brooklyn, the prioritization of maybe himself over the team in a lot of different regards and aspects, and just the track record that he's been able to show of going to a new situation, saying that he's all fully bought in, and then as soon as adversity hits or there's discomfort on his side, he tends to look for greener pastures. This is an aggressive move made by Dallas, not just to try to increase their championship odds this year, but knowing that if they're giving up the capital that they were for Kyrie, they're going to have these plans of being able to retain him. This is not just the next 4 or 5 months that we're talking about here, Sam. And that's what I worry about a lot, is what happens beyond the rest of the season.
So I'm not convinced on that. I do think that they are probably looking at this as a trial run. The reason for that is the pick capital that Dallas used. They used the 2029 first round pick, which means that they still have available to trade the 2025 and 2027 first round picks in a deal if they need to move on from Kyrie in a different manner this offseason, right? They also get rid of the Dinwiddie contract. They move off of the Dorian Finney-Smith deal. Not that Dorian Finney-Smith is someone worth moving off of. He is an eminently reasonable contract worth something like, I think it was a 4-year, $50 million, $55 million extension that he signed midway through last season. But it does open up some flexibility for them moving forward, especially if they could potentially move off of the Davis Bertans deal, move off of the Tim Hardaway Jr. deal. They have some interesting optionality moving forward if they decide that this Kyrie deal isn't something they want to move forward with after this year. I would imagine that they're looking at it as they are hopeful that this works out great and that they are able to re-sign Kyrie. Let's talk about what Kyrie has done this year and in his time in Brooklyn. So let's just buzz through the off-court stuff first, because unfortunately the off-court stuff impacts his on-court availability. So his decision to not get vaccinated last year, something that probably will be less, in fact, definitely will be less of a problem in Texas than it was in the New York City, essentially. That caused him to miss a substantial portion of last season. He has also missed some time due to sharing an anti-Semitic video on his Twitter page. He got suspended for a minimum of 5 games. I believe he ended up missing 8 games because of that. This is also a guy that I think in 8 seasons of his 11 in the NBA has missed something like 20 games. He does tend to just miss time here and there, right? And you would think that won't necessarily get better as his career continues to age, as he gets older, everything like that. There's the locker room factor. I don't know Kyrie. I don't really, frankly, have interest in knowing him, but it is something that is an important thing to note here as well. Here's the other thing that's important. Kyrie has been absolutely incredible when he's been on the court this year. Kyrie is averaging 27 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists. He has a 60.4 true shooting percentage or something like that. He is absolutely awesome. He's been an incredible second fiddle next to Kevin Durant. He's the guy that handles the ball more than any other player on that Brooklyn Nets roster, because Kevin Durant is such a assassin in terms of when he gets his touches, when he gets his time of possession, essentially. But Kyrie has been great. He has been everything that Brooklyn kind of wanted when he's been on the court this season next to Kevin Durant. He has been the isolation creator. He's been willing to occasionally move off the ball when the time has called for it. Everything about what Kyrie has done this season, he is very deserving on the court of his all-star starting nod. He has been incredible this season, and this is a genuine top 20 player in the NBA that is getting traded. And those guys don't get traded mid-season all that often. So if you're Dallas and you're looking at this and you think you need to do something, and unequivocally, I think Dallas was desperate to make a shake-up move in some regard, given the way that their season has gone. It's been a little bit too roller coastery, a little bit too up and down. On top of it, you look at what has happened with them in the past with high-level point guards. Jalen Brunson was a terrific partner last year in the playoffs for Luka Doncic. All due respect to Jalen Brunson, Kyrie Irving is a better player than Jalen Brunson. So could that even be a more elevated circumstance of what Dallas is able to get out of this fit together? Maybe. Honestly, I'm willing to hear that out. What are your thoughts as you kind of think about the on-court fit of Kyrie here?
I think the offense is going to be superb. And let's just start there, because I think we could probably spend a lot of time diving into the defense, and I'm sure we will. But
we will.
The offensive fit between these two guys, in theory, makes a lot of sense because of Kyrie's ability to shoot, because of the need, particularly in postseason play, to have another creator next to Luka so that he's not just doing ISO ball for 48 minutes against really good teams and individual defenders. It checks a lot of boxes for them. I think the most important part of this is trying to add a little bit more motion or movement into their playbook, because these are two incredibly smart basketball players who can leverage situations where defenses try to gamble against them or are slightly out of position. And when it's just dribble, high pick and roll, isolate, switch, and play, I don't think that does enough to force defenses to rotate and put them in disadvantageous positions. When you have these two guys who are some of the most physically capable off the bounce and really smart at recognizing those mistakes, there's got to be some form of movement and increased activity on the offensive end to leverage that. Maybe that's more like Luka Kyrie pick and roll in different situations where they're screening for each other. I think there's definitely room for, having one of them be like a guy who comes off of wide pin downs while the other one creates from the top of the key or the opposite wing. And they use that as a decoy to occupy. I think there's some screen to screener action stuff that you can do. Like there's a lot that opens up playbook wise where this is not going to be just the stagnant offense that we've seen from Dallas, while also knowing whenever they need to, they can go back to that. Luka's probably the best player in the game right now, creating an advantage for his team in a one-on-one situation. And now they add a great floor spacer and a guy who can get downhill, attacking closeouts whenever he needs to.
So, yeah, I do think that one thing that's interesting here is that while Luka is the most ball dominant, heliocentric player in the NBA, he just is. If you look at the numbers, there's just not really a case otherwise for it in terms of time of possession, dribbles per touch, everything like that. He's the guy that dominates the ball most across the NBA. In this offense, there is also real space for other guards to be able to get real time of possession.
Yep.
How many minutes per game do you think Spencer Dinwiddie had the ball in his hands this season per game?
No idea. Yeah, absolutely not.
5.7 minutes per game.
Jeez.
How many minutes per game do you think Kyrie Irving had the ball in his hands in terms of time of possession?
I'd guess a little more than that.
5.7 minutes per game.
Wow.
They're both
really?
right around the same. Now, I think that Kyrie has never played. I went back and looked at like the time of possession that LeBron had back in 2014 all the way through 2017. Kyrie has never played with someone this ball dominant. I think people don't really recognize how much LeBron was willing to kind of shift off the ball a little bit more often when he was younger. And when he was in that situation in Cleveland where they were trying to win a title and things were going the way that they were going, which is to say pretty well. He was willing, especially in the regular season, to play a little bit more off the ball than what people remember. Luka has never done that. Luka has also never really been asked to do that in a way. Now, what does that mean? I don't necessarily know. Luka is one of the smartest basketball players like in the NBA, maybe that's ever lived on planet Earth, right? You would think that he'll be willing to shift off the ball in order to accommodate someone that is this talented, this gifted as a scorer as Kyrie is. I think that often it was more that they didn't have anyone else, and the best, most efficient source of offense was, okay, let's just go with the Luka Doncic offense. The best thing we can do every single possession is run a ball screen for Luka and then run a secondary action off of it. If he sees it, great. If not, Luka's probably going to be the guy that gets us the best shot. But with Kyrie, things will be a little bit different. More than the way that Kyrie adjusts to this, I'm interested to watch the way Luka adjusts to this. I think he is the one in general for Dallas that is just drastically more important here.
Yep.
Both short and long term, right? Like, let me just be clear. I probably would not have done this if I was Dallas, because I would be terrified. This is a high risk, high reward move. I would be terrified that going out and trading for Kyrie Irving is the thing that starts the downfall toward Luka leaving my organization. And that's just not something that I would ever want to risk, period, point blank. And maybe it won't. Maybe it'll just be like a half season that we all laugh at. Remember when Kyrie Irving played that half season in Dallas because, the Mavs and Mark Cuban went out and acquired him, and they thought that his relationship with Nico Harrison and Jason Kidd would be able to calm him down and, get rid of all of the wild stuff that Kyrie does off the court. Remember, they did this with Rajon Rondo one time and it didn't work out, right? Dallas does this. Or it could be a situation where it works out great. They go to the conference finals again. And then next season, the season after, Kyrie starts to do as we talked about, continue to wear out his welcome, which he has done in every place that he's been so far. And that ends up being frustrating for Dallas, for Luka Doncic, for everyone involved. So
Yep.
it's a fascinating. This is the most interesting deal I've seen made midseason in the NBA. I think that I can remember, like point blank. I cannot remember anything this interesting in terms of both short and long-term ramifications across the league.
So I keep going back to the coaching side of me, right? And thinking about this is a team game. Your aspirations whenever you step into a locker room are to win a championship and maximize the group that you have. And Lou Holtz, when he was coaching at Notre Dame, used to always ask players on his teams the same 3 questions every year. Are you committed? Do you care about others? And can we trust you? And that was his litmus test to trying to figure out if guys were about the right things on their team. And I struggle to find the right answers for Kyrie Irving based on the track record we've seen from him, that he checks those boxes in a way that would allow the Mavericks to legitimately be the cohesive unit that would win a championship. They certainly have increased their talent level right now and are on track with other top teams in the West and a couple of the top ones in the East to become, if they can round out their roster the right way, a legitimate championship contender, not just this year, but if things hold up and Kyrie continues to play well and mesh with Luka and want to come back, this can be a multi-year window that's open. But the only way that they actually break through and win that championship is if all of the pieces align chemistry-wise, if there's dependability within their locker room, and the people who they need to show up will show up and sacrifice for each other. And that's just one area that I'm not fully willing to trust Kyrie Irving based on all that we've seen, dating back to the moment he requested a trade from Cleveland and ended up going to the Celtics.
First and foremost, you can't bring up Lou Holtz as a coach without me thinking of Ty Schmidt doing a Lou Holtz impression on the McAfee show. It's literally the funniest thing I think that anyone does in sports media, like consistently. Second, let's talk about the coaching side, because I think where they're going to be most taxed and tested is on the defensive end, right? This is now a team where it's Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving, and frankly, like Christian Wood is now like a very important piece here for them. Christian Wood is not a great defender. Kyrie is not a great defender. Luka is a better team defender than what he gets credit for, but for the most part, Luka takes possessions off because of the offensive load that he carries a lot of the time, right? So I don't really see a world where that triumvirate together, along with Tim Hardaway Jr., who's like not like outwardly terrible on defense, but is not great on defense, along with, like even like Dwight Powell, along with guys like, guys like Josh Green and Maxi Kleber become really, really important. They really need Maxi Kleber to come through, I think, in a substantial way defensively for them in the playoffs. But I don't see a trio of Kyrie, Luka, Christian Wood being able to defend at the level necessary in the playoffs. That doesn't say to me that they're screwed. That says to me that there's probably another move coming more than anything, because they need to either get a super high level rim protector, or they need to like accentuate their depth on the wing. To me, I would probably go the route of the rim protector personally, because I think that you can live with guys like Maxi Kleber, Josh Green, Reggie Bullock on your 3-4, wing, 2-3-4, wherever you want to call Luka. You can live with like two of those three guys being on the court with Kyrie. What would you do in this circumstance? Like, how would you go about trying to make this a tenable defense? Because right now, I don't see this roster as a tenable defensive roster.
I don't either. And that's a really tough question to ask. I think if I had the answers, I'd probably have called Jason Kidd already and offered my resume up to join him for the next few months. But to me, it starts with lineup construction and how you want to build your roster. And Dallas is going to have to lean into the offensive end. They know that that's their bread and butter now. So every lineup should be about having enough defensive potency to get by while leaning into just having the most devastating offensive attack they can. And to me, the way that you do that is obviously you have Kyrie playing the 1, but you need Luka playing the 2. When he has a relative size advantage, when he's been surrounded by bigger guards and wings, and the Mavericks can set high pick and roll, high ghost screen actions, and force switches where now Luka has maybe smaller or worse defenders around him, he continually uses his size advantage to get guys into the lane, play at his pace, and cerebrally pick apart any type of coverage that's around him. The higher on the wing you play him more as the 3, or even in small lineups, you play him as the 4. I don't think that has as much impact or potency. So making sure that it's Kyrie, Luka, a big, and maybe a couple other wings is the best lineup strategy to me. So then as we're looking forward to how do you construct a really impactful defense, you need to find a way to mitigate Kyrie Irving getting picked on. That's what it comes down to. We see it every year in the postseason. Teams try to go after him a little bit. And I don't know if there's the collective IQ to scramble, switch, and protect him if he gets isolated in the post. I don't know if there's enough rim protection or a good enough pick and roll partner where like a Kyrie Christian Wood pick and roll defensive combo. I don't see that going well for the Mavericks. And
neither do I.
That's one that I don't really know. It doesn't matter what scheme you run. It's lineup construction. If you have those 2 guys on the floor, you're going to be porous in the pick and roll.
Yeah, or if you run like a, Kyrie being the guy guarding the ball handler, and then you bring Luka's man up to guard the ball screen, and then you have Christian Wood as like the roaming backline defender. Like that's also not going to work for you defensively. So they need to do something. The problem is that like there aren't a ton of like high level rim protectors that are out there on the trade market right now. Like it's actually kind of hard to find the guy that makes a lot of sense for them with this roster. Like I'll be honest with you. Like I actually can't really find it in terms of like what guy they should target. I mean, the ideal player for them, frankly, now is Jakob Poeltl. Like if they could go out and get Jakob Poeltl for a reasonable contract, or for like a reasonable deal, that's what I would do. Like an incredible screener for both, Kyrie and Luka, a real rim protector who would really help your defensive infrastructure in the middle. I just don't like the cost for Jakob Poeltl publicly has been 2 first-round picks for San Antonio. Could you do like Josh Green, something for salary matching and a first? I don't even know that really works for Dallas, because Dallas then loses one of the wings that they actually kind of desperately need. Like Josh Green's been really helpful for them this season throughout his time that he's been on the court. So just his energy, his activity level, he's been really, really good. So I actually don't know what the answer is for them on this. But if I was them, that's what I would be trying to do. I would be going to try to find like a high level rim protector that makes this make sense in a way that's a little bit more cohesive maybe than what it is now defensively. Like maybe the Knicks here's like kind of a sneaky one. Like would the Knicks be willing to do like Christian Wood for Hartenstein and like a pick or something in order to get Hartenstein off of their books for next year? Hartenstein has been in the past like a really good rim protector, at least last year for the Clippers. That's what was actually like kind of exciting about him, was he was obviously slicing and dicing from the high post and doing some things that way, but also was able to protect the rim. I'm just like spitballing here. Like I don't even know that Hartenstein like can play in the playoffs, which is ultimately someone they need, like a rim protector that can play in the playoffs. And I don't know that I see it to be like, I don't even think that makes a lot of sense for Dallas. So I'm like really trying to hunt and find the guy that like works for them. And Hartenstein is at least an option. Maybe it's like Dwight Powell and like for Hartenstein or something, where the Knicks are just happy to get off that second year of Hartenstein's deal. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm trying to find an option basically.
Yeah. And I think that they're just adding one player, whether it's a rim protector, I don't think that's enough either. Like I think there are still needs for maybe an additional wing so that you have a ton of versatility. Like they don't have that defensive stopper on the wings right now. I like Bullock. I like Green. Like, they're really going to miss Dorian Finney-Smith. This is a roster that is really, really, really going to miss him. If we're talking about acquiring Kyrie and talking about banking on the least dependable player in the NBA over the last few years to continue to show up over the next several months, do they need another insurance guard? Because they're completely devoid of ball handlers outside of Kyrie.
Honestly, I think the answer to that is no, because if that happens with Kyrie, they're fucked anyway.
They are.
So like you might as well just try and prioritize the things that work with Kyrie and Luka, because if one of Kyrie or Luka isn't there, they're screwed anyway. So you might as well just like go for it and try and accentuate those two more than try and figure out the other side of it.
So I look forward to the playoffs, Sam, and I think about those series that are going to be upcoming for who Dallas might end up playing. And I can't for the life of me figure out how Jason Kidd is going to construct his matchups. Like, if you play the Clippers, who guards Kawhi and who guards Paul George?
I mean, it's going to have to be like Maxi Kleber. It's going to have to be two of Maxi Kleber, Reggie Bullock, and Josh Green.
Oh.
And then those two are going to involve one of Luka, Kyrie, or Christian Wood, or whoever they have in the game is a big, because Christian Wood plays like 25 minutes a night, so they'll have someone else in the game for the other 23 minutes a night, 18 minutes a night, whatever they play Christian Wood minutes wise. They're going to try and attack those guys. It's going to be really hard right now for Dallas to avoid getting picked on with the way that the roster is currently constructed. That's not to say that they won't go out and do something else before the deadline. Like, honestly, this comes from like not having talked to people about this. Like, I don't know, but I would predict that Dallas is going to try and do something else before the deadline, because this roster does not make sense as currently constructed on the defensive end, particularly. So yeah, no, like it's hard, because like I think that like Josh Green and Bullock and Kleber are good defenders, but there are just too many soft spots there to be able to attack outside of those guys.
Well, and they're asked, I think, to punch up above their weight class a little bit much if you're saying those are going to be the primary defenders against Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, LeBron James in a postseason series.
Well, what do you do against high level guards like Ja Morant?
Right. At that point, you know how you're going to be attacked, and the way that you've constructed your roster by being bigger and more wing heavy, like maybe you can cross match and put Josh Green there so that he's chasing guys off of screens and try to hide Kyrie elsewhere. Like, I guess that's what you could do against the right team, but at the very least, it's not. We know the pick and roll stuff is going to be a challenge whenever you have Wood and Kyrie on the floor together in particular. But I don't even feel good about it for a team that's so heavy on wings that they have the guys that can hold up one-on-one with the highest caliber wings in the world that they'll play in the playoffs.
Well, here's the bigger question, because who's the number one team in the West right now?
Denver.
Who deals with Jokic on this roster?
Yeah.
They actually don't have anyone to deal with Jokic on this roster.
Nope.
They have to do something. They have to go and do something. Like,